Call Me by Your Name, 2017, directed by Luca Guadagnino, starring Timothy Chalamet, Armie Hammer, Michael Stuhlbarg. A quick logline: in 1980s Italy, romance blossoms between a 17-year-old student and the older man hired as his father's research assistant. I put this movie on the list because food to me can also be quite sensual and a
Mm-hmm.
key part of your love language. And I think this movie really captures that. But it also kind of threads along how different people were brought up and grew up, and a lot of that has to do with where you are in the world. And so there's
Mm-hmm.
something about Timothy Chalamet's family, which is a very eclectic sort of international family. There are art people, there are food people, and you see from the very beginning of the movie how these breakfasts and dinners and such are happening. And you can really tell that food and the cooking of it, and plucking fresh apricots or peaches or what have you from the orchard in this beautiful kind of Italian villa that they spend time at during the summertime is so
Mm-hmm.
important. And it's not in a pretentious kind of way. They love it. It's kind of part of their fabric. They love having people over. They love having these guest students who show up every year apparently, and
Mm-hmm.
they're instantly part of the family. And the breakfast table, lunch table, dinner table is the place where they all get together. And then there's music, and maybe a cognac or something is being
Mm-hmm.
shared. This is like, I love this so much, like the life that these people have, where I don't know if they're super rich or wealthy or anything like that. Maybe a little bit, they're okay, but just art and food is such a big part of their life. So I guess point being that when you grow up this way, food then automatically is part of your love language,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sensual. And I will get to kind of the details of that as we go further, but I'm guessing you'd watched this movie before.
Actually, I hadn't seen it. Yeah, this is the
Oh,
first time I'd seen it. And I think it's interesting comparing this to your last film, Wedding Banquet, where there are a lot of these scenes in this film too that just take place around a casual, just family. This is like breakfast and dinner table. A lot of breakfast. I think the
right.
breakfast scenes stand out a lot here, which I think is, like you were saying, a sign of the family eats together, even though they're not all talking. Maybe the dad's reading a paper, or
Right.
the mom's having another conversation with one of the staff or what have you. But they're all together, and that is what makes them the family. And then when there's the student who comes in, that's how Armie Hammer kind of gets integrated into the family and feels so much like accepted, because he's right
Mm-hmm.
there with them at these breakfast tables. And it doesn't come across at all, like you said, as pretentious. I mean, they're just a simple table outside. They're not eating some incredible meal. It just could be just a little like poached egg, and that's
And
it.
apricot
And
juice, which
apricot juice.
sounds so exotic to me, but it's like normal.
Right, right. These aren't like elaborate meals. I don't really think they're that wealthy of a family. They're just
No.
academics, and this is what they like to eat outside too. The settings are just sitting outside on a nice morning in Italy and having just a simple small breakfast with the people of your people that you like, family, friends. Definitely was very appealing. I was like, oh man, I just want to be there.
I know.
Sitting at that table, not just because of the food, but just the whole mise en scène,
The
if you
whole
will, of
setup.
it all. Just seems so cool.
Yeah, yeah. No, and Luca, he is, I feel like, probably from a family like this, because you see this time and again in his movies. I almost put another movie of his, I'm Love, which is even
Mm-hmm.
more about food and eroticism and sensuality through food. But I ended up going with this movie. But
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, he captures like the whole setup like beautifully. You're instantly transported, and you feel like you just live there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, any other thoughts on the movie?
In general, I didn't really like it much. I felt that first of all, I do have a bias against Timothy Chalamet.
I know.
I just think he's just incredibly annoying, not a good actor, just sort of sucks life out of stuff. And
Oh,
and this movie made me annoyed by him even more than I
oh,
probably ever have been. And Armie Hammer was interesting. Like obviously he has a lot of issues now that have
right.
come out, but I always liked him as an actor. However, I sort of felt he came across kind of creepy in this movie for some
Yeah.
reason. And I don't think it's because now I know about those revelations of him maybe being a creep in real life, potentially. but I don't know, he just came across as like kind of a sleaze. And I didn't buy the love that was developed between them, which is interesting because like the whole premise of this film is like unrequited love. And you know that they quote that thing, better is it better to what is it, better to speak or better to die? Like better to say you love someone or better just to keep silent. And usually that's a theme that resonates a lot with me. Some of my favorite movies are the ones that hit me the hardest. They're ones where that is the central theme. But I just didn't buy the love between them at all. I don't know whether there was the age difference or just the fact that I don't like either of the actors. But yeah, it just didn't really work for me other than we can maybe, I don't know if you're talking about that final scene with Timothy Chalamet and his father, I thought was just
Right.
incredibly amazing. That
Yeah.
was I was like, wow, like this is easily the best part of the movie and just a very memorable scene, just incredibly well acted and written. Overall, I thought it was fine. I want to be at the breakfast table though. I do want to sit outside and I'd hang out with Army Hammer, maybe not so much Timothy Chalamet.
Ugh. Oh gosh,
Too
yeah.
weedy
Slim
and
pickings here, it seems like.
yeah.
Yeah, I, I I can see why you would say that. And I've watched this movie many times,
Mm-hmm.
since it came out because it was talked about so much. And I, of course, love the setting and everything.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come back to it again and again to see because it didn't hit me the way it hit a lot of people when I first watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And the central problem was I didn't quite buy or fully understand the love between the two characters. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the more I watched it, I've started to maybe understand it better.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do, I think, more with that it's so real and so kind of unpretentious in terms of storytelling that nothing is said. It's sort
Mm-hmm.
of, you have to really watch it many times to kind of look for the clues of how this love is developing, on both sides and more from Timothy's side for sure.
Yeah.
And not much is said other than that one scene when they go out in this kind of piazza central part, and then he says something about that, you have no idea the things that I don't know, and that sort of is the only thing that is stated, nothing else is stated. So I don't know, it's taken me a few watches to
Mm.
kind of understand that, and that's, I guess, the genius of the movie now that I have understood it, that it's
Mm.
not spelled out at all, and it's sort of in the performances. It's also a little bit in how the filmmaking is set up, of like how glances are shared, and how Timothy's always watching him. And you can see it's love, sure, but it's more of infatuation.
Right,
It's
right,
more
right.
of sort of coming to terms with who I even am, that I am gay, and all of that. So I think there's a lot at play, and none of it is stated, which I think it takes a bit to kind of really parse that through.
Mm.
And on Army's side, like, I found him honestly very annoying and kind of stiff and robotic, and just I've always found him kind of sleazy.
Mm.
Nothing to do with everything we know about him, because there's the way he speaks is like very fast and very monotonic, and
Mm-hmm.
da 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 da. It's always that. It's the same performance in every movie, pretty much. But here again, after multiple watches, it started to make sense to me a little bit that this guy he's living even a bigger lie. Because if you think about it, he doesn't have Michael Stuhlbarg or this amazing mother
Right.
in his life, probably. I don't think he's had this conversation with anybody. He's been living this double life. He
Mm-hmm.
goes back to the US and gets married.
Right.
They share a little bit about he's a Jewish and lives in an area where, or at least was brought up in an area where there weren't that many Jews. So
Mm-hmm.
it seems like there's like a lot of pent up stuff with him, with his identity, across the board, that he's never really had a chance to air out. And what would that do to somebody? It would make them, you know, confident in some ways, but trying to compensate and overcome everything else that's going on beneath the surface. And in some scenarios, maybe even a little creepy, that you will take advantage of somebody,
Right. Right.
for reasons that even you can't fully articulate. And that's sort of the genius of this movie, is like it's all floating around, it's
Mm-hmm.
not dealt with in an explicit way, but you can kind of think about this as to why people are behaving the way they are. And just like you were saying with the celebration, that you're a guest at the table, in this case, I think you're one of those girls who just, rides on a bicycle into this house. Like, that's how you feel
Yeah.
like.
Hmm.
as a viewer, that you're sort of seeing a little bit, but you're not getting a lot of it. So yeah, that's what I make of this movie now, but it took me a while to get there.
Yeah, maybe the movie will open up to me more on subsequent viewings if I were to watch again. It's not like I would be like, oh, I'm never seeing this movie
Yeah.
again. It just maybe it'll just take me time to get over Timothy Chalamet as well. I don't even am I pronouncing his name correctly? Is
You
it?
are.
Yeah, okay. Like he's my
Although
annoying
Meryl
kid at the
says
moment.
Timothée Chalamet,
Oh,
because he has
he
the
does.
character on the E
Yeah,
at the end. She's the only
yeah.
person I've heard who calls him Timothée Chalamet. I love
That's
that.
hilarious. But he's my kind of most annoying kind of dweeb of the moment, and maybe in 10
Oh,
years I'll be somebody else that I'll dislike, and then I'll kind of forget my disdain for him as an actor and as a presence, and that maybe then I'll be able to come to this
yeah.
a little bit more. But I did find the first, I guess it was the first act or first two acts, when there wasn't anything actually happening between them, and it was a lot of like shared glances, subtext, you know, Chalamet looking at Army Hammer and all the things that were unsaid. I found that to be more interesting. Like I was involved in the story. I was like, oh, what's gonna happen? Oh, he
Mm-hmm.
does. It does. Like, is Army Hammer also gay? Like, what's going on here? And like figuring that
Mm-hmm.
out was interesting. And then once they consummated and basically like it was obvious what was going on, that's when I started to really lose interest just in the
Mm-hmm.
plot, until again that final scene with him and Timothy Chalamet and his father, where they're basically addressing the elephant in the room of, okay, yeah, you're gay. What are you going to do with this? What that was a real, your first love, essentially. You just experienced it. What is that like? I thought that was just an incredibly
Amazing.
well written and acted sequence, and the final ending of the movie too, where Chalamet comes back in from the cold. It's like
Mm-hmm.
snowing. It's like X number of months or years later, what have you, and then he hears that Army Hammer's married and everything, and just sits there and like cries by the fireplace. I thought that actually was like, okay, I could see this sort of, he's processing everything that just happened,
That's
and
amazing.
I
Yeah.
thought that I really liked how that ended as well, even though the outfit he was wearing was just absolutely like, pompously ridiculous, but that's him. Um, but yeah, that I
But
thought was effective.
yeah, I will say though that in this movie, he is supposed to be that kind of character.
Hmm.
This is an annoying guy who's
Very
like,
annoying. Yeah.
you know, writing music and what have you, and that whole scene of like he's playing the guitar and Armie Hammer says like, can you play that for me again? And he goes
Oh,
back inside and just plays like different riffs of other things on the piano. That's really purposeful to kind of tell us that he is an annoying character, and a teenager
no,
who is
he is a
surrounded by a
teenager.
lot
Yeah.
of art and
Yep.
you know academia and such, and sometimes, and obviously very smart and sharp, reads a ton,
Hmm.
but that can also kind of get into your head. So I think it's by design, which doesn't help the case, I suppose.
Well, no, I understand. It really is a
Yeah.
coming of age movie, actually,
Yeah.
about a, yeah, like kind of a nerdy, dweeby little kid who, through falling in love for the first time, I think better understands who he is and how the world
Right.
works. I think, and that's the evolution there, with not only the conversation with his father, but then also with him, having that emotional reaction at the end of the film, because kind of what you're saying about Army Hammer, I think he was living a lie and is going to
Mhm.
continue to do that for the rest of his life. And it's actually kind of sad when you think about that. Like
Yeah.
he's never really going to find happiness. And what he had with Chalamet's character, I don't think was love from his standpoint at all.
I
It
don't think
was, I don't
so.
really even know. Maybe it was Predator. I mean, the age thing is kind of weird. Not only the age
Yeah.
gap, but the fact that Chalamet still acts like he's 12 for a lot of the film, like crying to his parents. His parents have little nicknames for him. Just
Yeah.
getting to, oh, daddy, mommy, pick me up, I'm so scared. Like, okay, but like that makes him even seem even younger than he actually is. So like I think the
Right.
age gap thing was a little awkward, but I do feel that his character, unlike Army Hammer's, does learn. And I think he's going to go through his life in a much more fulfilling and honest and open way because of that experience. Not only because he has the support of his father and his mother too, but I think he, when seeing what Army Hammer is going through, and that he's still living that lie and choosing to get married now, and like, well, that's not a good life that you want to be leading.
Right.
And I think Chalamet is sort of realizing that, and hopefully will go on to make decisions that are more truthful to him and find the happiness and love that he wants, instead of having to hide it, which unfortunately Army Hammer decided to do.
Yeah, I think so too. I will say though, on the crying and pick me up and such, this is the reverse effect, that when you're so close to your parents and you're so part of it, there's no generational gap between them. Those parents are his best friends.
Mm-hmm.
When you have that kind of a relationship and you're going through heartbreak and a hard time and what have you, that response feels appropriate to me. At least I can relate to that, because
Oh,
I kind of grew up that way as well. Because when you treat your parents as sort of equals in a way, which is how this family is, you know, it's kind of how you would react with the friend, when you're in bad times. So it's less of like a protective thing from the parents, more like, yeah, I need you.
sure. I mean, and I wasn't saying that was an inauthentic reaction. It just, in my mind, as an audience member, it de-aged him emotionally even more. So then the age gap between him and
Yeah, I
Army
know what you're
Hammer seemed
saying, but
more inappropriate,
I
is
don't
what.
see it that way
Okay,
at
that's how
all.
it sort of
Yeah.
rubbed me that way of
To
like,
me, that
okay.
feels age appropriate, just given the setup of this family,
Mm-hmm.
because this family is not that, oh, you are grown up now, so you're your own man, go do your own thing. This is not how this family functions. I can
No,
see.
yeah, no, me too. But just as an audience member, it makes him seem younger to me, and that makes the age gap seem even weirder. Just as an audience member, of like, okay, Army Hammer is like really taking advantage of this kid potentially, because 17 you can be, even though I think in Italy the age of consent is younger than it is in the United States, which is 18.
Mm,
But you can be a mature 18-year-old and a very immature 18-year-old, and if you're immature, you seem even younger. So I'm thinking
right.
that I was just trying to unpack why I felt that their relationship I didn't wasn't moved by. And I think I couldn't get over that, the fact that Army Hammer is much more older, both emotionally and physically than Charlemagne was
Yeah.
potentially. Because I'm usually, again, like these movies, this is the kind of thing that hits me always right in the heart every time. Like this type of plot, unrequited love and first love and all these sort of things. But this just left me cold for their love. I
Yeah.
mean, again, Charlemagne's that one scene with his father, I definitely was felt very impacted by that speech, but not their relationship. But maybe that was the point. I don't know. It is more of a coming of age story of Charlemagne than it is like a grand romance between two people. It was
Yeah,
more
it's not
about
a grand
Charlemagne's character.
romance of what happens to him. And like I said, it took me multiple watches to sort
Mm-hmm.
of for this thing to kind of really open up. But we've not mentioned the peach scene, which is pretty incredible.
Oh
And
yeah.
kind of what I was saying in the beginning, that kind of a literal manifestation of food and eroticism. And even though it's startling and such, again, given the setup and how this family operates and how woven food is, in their life, it's sort of, I don't know, in a weird way, I don't want to say it makes sense, but it
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel out of the ordinary to me, that. And it's also very character driven, like we've been talking, like this is a
Right.
kid who is exploring, and it is, all of this stuff is having this impact on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then that coupled with the life that he has, the setting that he lives in, it's sort of what yields to this. But it's also an expression of him kind of letting go,
Mm-hmm.
in a way.
Think
Like it's an act that, most people wouldn't feel comfortable doing, let alone doing it at your home where your family is and what have you. But it's sort of, an expression of, I guess, freedom and his self-discovery and such as well.
yeah, I mean, I saw it's like a coming of age sort of thing, right? Like that
Yeah.
self-discovery, like you mentioned about his desires, his sexuality, and then weaving
Yeah.
food into that, which is important to their family. So I think, yeah, that
Yeah,
does
it's
fit
very literal.
thematically. Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Very literal. It does fit in a lot with the theme of the film and especially just of the episode that we're talking about. So I think
Yeah.
that works really nicely. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.